On the surface, October 1958 was a peaceful time. America was prospering. Peace was at hand. But just beneath the pleasant exterior, trouble was simmering. This was truer in the South than anywhere else. In Atlanta, Georgia, a city dubbed the city too busy to hate, an explosion was about to bring down the veneer of peace and expose the inequality behind it. One courageous man, Rabbi Jacob Rothschild, was ready to stand amidst the rubble and speak out, taking responsibility to defend the rights of those he had watched suffer without defense. Jacob Rothschild was born in a Pittsburgh neighborhood on August 4, 1911. After graduating from high school at age 15, Rothschild attended Hebrew Union College on full scholarship. Soon after, he returned to his home congregation in Pittsburgh to be the rabbi's assistant. In 1942, Rothschild joined the U.S. Army as a Jewish chaplain and served in Guadalcanal during World War II. After being honorably discharged in April 1946, he was offered the job of rabbi at Atlanta, Georgia's Hebrew Benevolent Congregation. As a Reformed Jew, Rothschild committed to applying his beliefs to the political, economic, and social problems of the time. According to a leading Reform rabbi, Reformed Jews are expected to recognize that religion is related to life and must therefore practice their religious ideals in every facet of their lives, whether it is convenient or inconvenient, comfortable or uncomfortable, fashionable or unfashionable. This created the lens through which the rabbi saw current events. Over the next few years, Rothschild observed as African Americans started joining to protest segregation and unequal treatment in the southern United States. Rosa Parks courageously refused to give up her seat, triggering the Montgomery bus boycott. The Supreme Court issued its ruling in the case, Brown v. Board of Education. Reluctantly, the University of Alabama admitted its first black student. In Arkansas, the National Guard obstructed 9 black students from attending Little Rock High School. Congress passed the Civil Rights Act of 1957, and Martin Luther King Jr. started the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. During this time, Rabbi Rothschild made himself aware of the problems at hand in Atlanta. When he first arrived, he immediately noticed the segregated facilities, from waiting rooms and water fountains to train cars and restaurants. He spoke out to his congregation, civic leaders, and other religious leaders in Atlanta. He joined other Jews in participation with groups of Catholic and Protestant religious leaders who stood against segregation. He regularly spoke to his congregation about stopping segregation because of its inherent injustice. He also communicated with other Jews about their social responsibilities. For instance, he received a letter from a man identified only as Norman. In it, Norman suggests that Rothschild be the leader in joining ministers across many denominations to stand together, and with Jews in the South that they speak as one voice. Norman says he was involved in repatriating Japanese in California after World War II, and based his suggestions to Rothschild on these experiences. He ends his letter to the rabbi with, "Above all, I don't like to see a colleague martyrizing himself," warning Rothschild of the peril that may come as a result of his outspokenness in the Jewish community. Despite these warnings, Rothschild believed that the negative reactions to desegregation were going to get much worse before what came to be known as the Civil Rights Movement prevailed. He also believed that these hate groups may direct violence toward Jews regardless of whether or not they spoke out. He understood a bombing at the temple was a real possibility. Nevertheless, he felt a responsibility to support the rights that African Americans sought. In his reply to Norman, he states, "If this is dangerous, then I shall have to live dangerously, because I firmly believe that this is my responsibility as a rabbi, and even if I weren't a rabbi, it would be my responsibility as a human being." Why did Rabbi Rothschild feel this responsibility so deeply and adamantly? To some degree, he was influenced by the experiences of Jews in Europe during the Holocaust, because few people stood by the Jews against the Nazis and Hitler. He believed that if Jews condemned the millions who stood by out of fear of Hitler, then Jews could not stand by when they faced the same dilemma of seeing civil rights of African Americans being disregarded. He also felt the best way to honor those few in Europe who chose to live by their ideals, despite mortal danger, was to support Black Americans in their pursuit of equality. Then it happened. A brutal act of hatred came in a thundering explosion, a wave of expanding air, crumbling columns and rattling windows and dishes in nearby homes. A bomb placed at the side of the temple detonated shortly after 3:30 in the morning, waking sleeping neighbors. It was Sunday, October 12, 1958, a day that Jewish congregants would normally be coming to the temple for Sunday school. Instead, the first to arrive that Sunday morning walked through debris caused by 50 to 60 sticks of dynamite, surveying over $200,000 in damage. Mayor William Hartsfield of Atlanta arrived on the scene soon after the destruction was discovered. In his public remarks, he stated,
"And we are shocked and amazed that this awful thing could happen in our midst. And we prefer to believe that it is the work of people outside of our city."
Rothschild also made comments that day saying, "The lunatic fringe doesn't really care who it bombed. Any minority is weak, and any who are weak are its prey." The bombing was not only an awakening for Atlantans, but caused the realization that federal involvement was much needed. President Eisenhower was informed of the bombing that day while speaking to a largely Jewish group in New York. He expressed a feeling of horror and described the bombers as hoodlums. He sent the Federal Bureau of Investigation to the desecrated temple, which was the first time they had been officially dispatched to investigate a bombing. Earlier that year, Rabbi Rothschild had written to a friend of his frustration over the complete lack of leadership by an administration and a president that have stubbornly refused to exert the influence which they have. Finally, Rothschild was getting the federal assistance he felt was overdue. Also in response to the bombing, many outraged journalists wrote columns, and furious editors wrote rousing headlines. One such headline on October 13th read, "Jewish Temple on Peach Street wrecked by dynamite blast. Godless bombing aimed at all Atlantans." An editorial in the October 13th edition of the Atlanta Journal was titled, "A Desecrated Temple Cries Out to Heaven." Ralph McGill, editor-in-chief at the Atlanta Constitution, wrote his Pulitzer Prize-winning editorial, "A Church, a School," in which he described the hate-filled souls of those who claimed responsibility for the bombing. Even the Democratic governor of Georgia, Marvin Griffin, a known segregationist, publicly condemned the bombing and made a contribution to the reward fund. However, while Governor Griffin appeared to condemn the bombers, his long-standing habits of discrimination caused him to seem hypocritical, typical of Southern politicians who built the barrier that black civil rights leaders struggled to break through. But despite the lack of meaningful government support and protection, Rabbi Rothschild stood firmly on his beliefs that segregation was wrong, despite the continual threats to his family and the vicious attack on the temple. On Friday of that very week, the rabbi delivered a courageous sermon entitled, "And None Shall Make Them Afraid." He stood firm amidst the bomb's rubble and declared no fear.
He really taught not only his congregation, but the Jewish community and the city more broadly, not to be afraid when crucial questions come.
After several years of public activism, Rabbi Rothschild met civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. at a dinner party, and they built a friendship. They started a regular routine of having dinner together. Though much is not known about their specific discussions, it is apparent that there was a great mutual respect between the men, evidenced by the fact that Rothschild was the Master of Ceremonies at the Atlanta banquet honoring Dr. King for being awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964.
He was a supporter and he was a friend and an ally to the leaders of the civil rights movement, like Dr. King.
Rabbi Rothschild continued to fight for integration after his temple was bombed in 1958. He was a needed voice through the vicious storms of the civil rights era. He left a lasting impact on the movement in Atlanta, the state, and in the nation. Considering the danger, it is remarkable that Rabbi Jacob Rothschild took on the responsibility of so publicly advocating for civil rights of African Americans and is a testimony to the strength of his character.